asked this question, how do I leave work at work? She said, how do I leave any, not just work, but also work thoughts? And I think that's sometimes the hardest one, right, is leaving the work thoughts. So I wanted to share some very practical, tactical steps and see if it helps. I would love for you guys to take a couple of notes if you're in the middle of something. I think this will help. I came up with 6, and then at the end I threw in a bonus 7th step. So let's not waste any more time. I know we all just have a few minutes. We're taking a quick coffee break. And the first one is, I worked with a psychiatrist once who gave me a really good formula. And he said, anytime you're trying to break a bad habit, he goes, you first have to recognize that you have the bad habit, right? So you have to learn, kind of recognize that you've got something you want to change so that you can unlearn it, and then you've got to relearn something else, right? So you're trying to replace it with something new. So if you've been carrying work home for years, it's going to take time to break, and that's just the reality. But if you're at a place, especially coming in from a long weekend and feeling like you're trying to play catch up or something like that, this would be a great week, even if it seems like the worst week to start this, to trial it. So remember, you've got to learn, to unlearn, to relearn. And then James Clear in his Atomic Habits, he talks about that a lot of times when we're not reaching a goal, it's not because the goal is the problem. He says that systems are the processes that lead to desired outcomes. So back to that, he says, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So you think about it in a structure like your work environment. Let's say for those of us that work on site, if at a certain point something isn't working and we're not reaching a certain goal, we change the system, right? If a system is broken at work, we don't expect to have a different outcome until we change the system, right? Some of us, we deal with antiquated systems. It's the same thing with trying to unlearn carrying work home, is we've got to put new systems in place to replace the bad systems that maybe we had before. So that's a real good point to remember. And the next thing is setting constraints. I love to talk about constraints because most people feel that constraints limit their freedom, but constraints actually give us a lot of freedom. And Parkinson's Law says that work expands so as to fill the time available. So if you've ever experienced this, is let's say that you have 10 hours to meet a deadline. A lot of times you work all the way and you use those 10 hours to meet that deadline. But if you have 2 hours to meet a deadline, you somehow figure out how to get it done. I'm going to give you another example, and I want to see like a thumbs up for this or a heart if you've ever had this. You're leaving on vacation in 2 days. How much do you accomplish in the next 2 days? Are you like me where you somehow miraculously get laser focused and you can accomplish a bajillion and one things? Well, that's because you have a constraint. There's like a definite deadline. You're leaving and this stuff has to get done. So if you've ever experienced that, give me a thumbs up because I can't be alone. So Parkinson's Law says that work will expand to fill the time available. So what that means is you've got to decide what are the time frames that you're going to set. And then don't break the promise to yourself. So for example, for me, I try to not look at work email before 8:30, and I try to not look at work email after 6:30. And sometimes there's exceptions to the rule in that I like to never get like overly critical or overly like rigid, because then sometimes those things become stressful, but that's my general rule. And so those are your constraints. Okay, so the next one is have a wrap-up ritual at the end of your work day. So for those of you that have different types of work days, it's nice to have a ritual that's similar. So for example, leaving time at the end of the day to button things up, whatever time that is for you, however long you need, just to mentally check off and look at where you're at. Now, be okay to leave some things undone. I talk a lot about this in a lot of my sessions. Not all work is created equal. Not everything has the same priority. So look at those tasks and say, does this need to be done right now? And does it need to be done by me, right? Some of those things that we have on our list, they're just on there and we've got this never-ending to-do list. So instead of a never-ending to-do list, outline a big 3 strategy, what are the 3 things that you must accomplish this week? And then break them down into daily big 3 tasks. What do you need to do this day to get you closer to those big 3? When you do that, what's awesome about that is you leave your workday no matter what time you leave. Once those 3 things are done, you know you're getting one step closer to your overall goal. And that's huge for all of us. You don't have any more weeks where you're like, what did I accomplish? So I hope this was helpful. And I'm going to finish this cup of coffee and then go into my leadership meeting. I hope you guys have an awesome Tuesday. Don't let it stress you just because it's a short week, okay? All right, talk to y'all soon. Bye.